huge news coming out of WWE where Triple H came out on Smackdown and announced that there is going to be an upcoming draft where all superstars are going to be eligible for it. Let's break down the news right now. I love a draft. It's been a long time since we've had a draft for WWE, and I'm so glad this was the announcement made by Triple H, because I gotta be honest, I started wondering if it was going to be another Vince McMahon thing or another Triple H Raw after Mania announcement where he's gonna come out and basically just say the exact same things as he did on Raw, or worse, he was gonna quit. This was great. Triple H came out not at the beginning of Smackdown. He waited till a little bit later on in the show where he did come out and he did talk a little bit about WrestleMania, the numbers, how well it all performed, and then proceeded to announce that there is going to be a draft coming up in the upcoming weeks. Now, according to Worked Wrestling, that has come up with some scoops recently, they were quoted as saying that the current planned date for the upcoming WWE Draft is May the 8th in Jacksonville, Florida. Now, this would tie in really well, I think, because number one, this isn't happening around the time of Survivor Series, which is typically what Vince McMahon has done with these drafts in the past, and it drove me absolutely nuts, because when you would have a draft at that time of the year, late in the year, you were already muddying the waters by having a draft, and newly drafted superstars were then having to form teams, and they've never worked together, and they've never really been a brand and a cohesive unit, and then you have these makeshift SmackDown versus Raw matches. If the draft does happen on May the 8th, which is going to be a Monday Night Raw, this will be coming off the heels of WWE Backlash that's right around the corner. And we're slowly starting to see what they're going to do with Backlash. We may be getting Cody Rhodes versus Brock Lesnar. We may be getting the Bloodline, Jimmy and Jay and Solo versus Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and Matt Riddle. It's a really good time of year, I think, to have this draft, but let me know what you think. For me, it works really well because right now you have some B-level premium live events. You are then going to be working into a larger event like Money in the Bank. And then in August, you have SummerSlam. And so really, between the draft and like SummerSlam, there's a lot of really good story building elements that could take place. Backlash is happening in Puerto Rico. I think that this very much is going to be WrestleMania Backlash. So we're going to tie up a couple of loose ends, maybe even start a few smaller stories, if that. But realistically, I think Backlash is going to be a lot of rehashed matches, and it's going to be some rematches and just some quick stuff they need to put together for a show in Puerto Rico. I don't expect a ton from this. The reports are that Roman Reigns is not going to be even on the card. I think probably the headliner for Backlash would end up being Cody versus Brock. Maybe it's some sort of squash there. I don't know, to push the story even further. But coming out of that, you got the draft potentially, and then you have King and Queen of the Ring as a big show after that. So the draft itself, very exciting. I love a draft. Under Triple H, I'm curious. I'm curious what he's going to do and how he's going to put this together. He's going to want to make this draft different than what has been presented before. Is he going to position the draft as a true brand split, where, for example, if Sami and Kevin Owens end up over on Monday Night Raw, are they going to stay on Raw? Are they going to keep the unified titles, or are they going to finally split some of the belts? That's another big thing here too, is that when you have a draft, it is a perfect opportunity to introduce new titles, set up new feuds obviously, and even split some titles too. Triple H did say that all superstars are going to be eligible. Big question mark I have is, what superstars from NXT are we going to see? What call-ups could we see coming up to main roster? The draft is obviously the perfect time to do that, and I think you could easily point to somebody like Braun Breaker coming up to the main roster through the draft. What you do with a Braun Breaker, I have no idea right now, but I definitely see that as a way to bring him up, considering they didn't do anything for Raw after Mania. The show was just absolute trash, wasn't it? Personally, I really hope Triple H and his team keep the brand split happening. I want a true brand split. Right now, we have seen that not be the case at all for the better half of like 2 years, it feels. Really, since they were doing the Bloodline storyline and it really picked up, then they're just crossing over brands whenever it worked for the story. And so I think that when they have the draft, because it is announced, you need to have truly defined brands. Where does that leave our champions? If you're asking me, I'd really like to see Gunther with the IC title, bring that over to Raw, put the US title finally over on Smackdown. They have like never done that ever. So I'd love to see the IC title brought over to the other brand, especially to bring Gunther over to Raw. I think would be a smart move, because right now it feels like Gunther has gone through everybody that he can on the SmackDown brand. We can do another episode talking about like pre-draft and kind of some fantasy booking stuff, but truly high level things. I think that, well, the women's main title scene is interesting because Rhea and Bianca have teased going at it again, kind of title for title, wondering if that's going to lead to some sort of unification match for the women's titles, which would be very interesting to see if they do that. If they did, you need mid-card women's titles. You need to build that out. And I think you need to have a women's Intercontinental US title on both brands, just like the men's if you want to do it that way. And I think drop the tag titles because I don't think that they're helping anybody. The main thing would be, what do you do with Roman and the main world titles and the Universal title? The draft could end up forcing Roman Reigns to split the belts or to just mash them together into the Universal Championship so he can continue his 1,000-day reign and get to that mark. Or is it just going to be left open where it's Roman Reigns is the WWE Universal Heavyweight Champion and he's cross brands? I don't personally love that, but for the networks, for USA and Fox, I can definitely see them wanting that because they're gonna want big stars on both of the networks. And Roman Reigns being the biggest star, you are gonna want him to be able to cross over to Raw or SmackDown whenever it needs to happen. If you relegate or just keep Roman tied to SmackDown with Fox, you're really gonna have to do something huge on Raw. And having Cody there is amazing, and that can work. However, there's no title involved. And the story you're talking about is involving the main title. This is where I think too, you can get out of the WWE Universal Heavyweight title scene. You can keep that on Roman, obviously. You could introduce the World Heavyweight title on Raw, or you could bring in the Winged Eagle, do something like that as the new WWE Championship. Crown a new champion at King of the Ring. That's a Superdome show in Saudi Arabia, so they're really going to want to build that up for King and Queen of the Ring. And I think for teams in general, there are some moves that I really would like to see. I'd like to see Alexa Bliss come back to TV and be moved over to SmackDown. I'd like to see, like I said, women's mid-card titles introduced. I think that they need to split up Damage Control and either just keep Sky and Dakota Kai as a tag team and split off from Bayley if they do that and move them over to SmackDown. Chad Gable and Otis, rumblings that they want to stay together, but I think it'd be good if you have Chad Gable, for example, over on SmackDown and get him going into the mid-card scene because he'd be really good as a solo act. The draft is exciting, it's fresh, and it's been a while since we've had one, and I think it's necessary for the size and the scope of the rosters. Really need that shake-up, and I think if it does happen on May the 8th, I think it's a really good time of the year to have a draft so you can set up the future storylines going all the way through SummerSlam and then presumably all the way to WrestleMania. It'll give each brand more identity, and I hope too that they fix up the sets and they do a reset on the set designs to make each show feel a little bit different. We'll have to wait and see. What do you guys think about the draft coming up? What draft moves do you want to see happen for Raw or for SmackDown? Hit me up in the comments below. If you enjoy videos like this, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, all of that. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.